Happy Friday, happy draft day. The 2024 NHL Draft is tonight at Sphere Las Vegas. Utah Hockey Club will be making their first ever selection at number 6. Who will they pick, and what are some other things to look for? And we'll talk about it on today's episode of the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast.
You are Locked On NHL in Utah, your daily podcast on all things hockey in Utah, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On NHL in Utah. I am your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got a great show on today's episode because it is finally draft day. A lot of waiting, Tom, of getting for this to this day, the first major day of the offseason for a lot of hockey teams, especially though for the Utah Hockey Club, who will be making their first ever selection in their team history.
I almost felt at times like this day wasn't going to come. The Stanley Cup final, while fantastic, felt like it lasted 3.5 months. And then, of course, you get into this little oddball window where contracts are being signed, deals are being made to kind of move and shuffle some guys around before the draft. And then we'll have more shuffling at the draft. And then we go headlong into free agency. But I don't know why that period of getting here seemed to take forever. So now that we are finally there, happy draft day, everybody. Looking forward to see what Utah is going to do this evening.
It really is interesting, that we're finally here. I'm glad we're here. Exciting. Especially if you're following on social media, all of the people who are converging over in Las Vegas, they're all having a blast right now. It seems like a lot of the prospects, interacting with some of the youth kids and some of their programs. If you're seeing a lot of things go all over the place. One thing I want to mention before we get into anything, I've been following a little bit the last couple of days, Tom, of Connor Ingram's time in Las Vegas because the NHL Awards just happened last night when everyone is listening to this episode. And Ingram's been essentially almost live tweeting his experience in Vegas, where he's, taking a picture of, Caesar's Palace, and he's like, "Is this where that salad guy ate, or whatever lived, or whatever it was?" And just started making a bunch of other jokes, and it was fun to watch. And I'm like, Connor Ingram, I love you.
I'm waiting to see if he breaks into the Kevin Weeks thing, where Kevin Weeks will report breaking news from in front of like a tank of sharks, or something random. Have you seen this where he puts the most random video in the backdrop?
And it's like the corner of his. It's just like his top of his head.
It's right. He's breaking news in front of like the World Pancake Championships or something. I don't know how he does this, but I find it hilarious, and I think it's awesome. I love when people have a sense of humor on social media. I don't think there's enough of that, so I can appreciate that. Kudos to Connor Ingram.
Yeah, it is really awesome to see. But now that we're finally in draft day, let's get to a little bit, Tom, of some of the expectations. We'll get to some of the Utah expectations in a little bit, but some of the expectations as a whole for this draft, because there is really a lot to discuss about it. We already know who number 1 is. I think there is no doubt in anybody's mind, and it was kind of even mostly confirmed by San Jose Sharks GM, about a week or two ago, whatever it was, that Macklin Celebrini is going to be the guy at number 1. Surprise, surprise,
and
right?
And I think in a way we're starting to overlook Celebrini now, which is kind of a shame because this guy. So I've with that thought in mind, gone back to reading up about him and his game and his evolution as a player. He really has a chance to be a franchise-changing player, and I almost feel like because he's been the consensus number 1 for so long, people are looking past that a little bit. So I can't wait to see him take the ice. I think it's going to be fantastic. I know it's for not Utah, but I really am anticipating his debut, much like I anticipated Connor Bedard, much like I anticipated, McDavid and Eichel. I can't wait to see the impact he's going to have.
It really is going to be interesting to see that. All the hype around it has been nice, but as you said, I feel like because he's been put at that consensus, they kind of forget the rest of it. The rest of what his game is all about. Anyone who's watched him play for Boston probably would be like, "What are you talking about? I have been praising this kid since day one." If you're one of those people, good on you, like that you follow this kid.
That Venn diagram of Utah and Boston fans is very small in a crossover. Very small.
You're right.
Do we have any? By the way, if we do, please comment and let us know if you somehow are in that tiny little minute space of Utah fan and Boston fan. I'd love to know that. BU hockey, that your thing?
Yeah.
Let us know.
Absolutely. Let us know. But what's interesting, Tom, is past that, I've almost thought to myself that like 2, 3, and 4 were pretty much set in stone, with Demidov, Levshunov, and Lindstrom. But it seems to me that there seems to be a little bit of separation that they're not even secure at the 2, 3, and 4 spot.
No, I don't even know that they are. And it's kind of funny because we've been talking about Levshunov here, in there as well. And I mean, you look at the final, just looking at even the North American scouting ranks, Lindstrom, Byam, those guys, and Zane Parekh is a guy who you talked about coming in defensively for Utah, number 5 ranked North American skater, but you add in the international guys. Plus, the other thing is no one's picking a goalie high. And if they do, it'll be a total shock. Let me say that if someone picks a goaltender high, I will be shocked. I just don't see that being this kind of draft. But you know what? I'm really intrigued to see. You talked about Demidov, who is not actually even Central Scouting's number 1 ranked North American skater. It's Saleyev, the defenseman. So, I mean, there is a lot of room and a lot of teams. And again, we talk about guys like if you can get a right-handed power play defenseman, a lot of teams will reach for that guy, even if it's not a position of need, because you just can't have too many. It's like lefties in baseball. You can never have too many. You're dealing from a position of strength. If it's your best player, take them. So I think we may see some shuffling based on that. And the other thing is, now that we're starting to really get a clearer picture of who's going to be available July 1, that could also shift a little bit of thinking for teams. Now, look, 99% of the guys drafted are not going to appear in your team's uniform for probably 3 to 5 years. Some of them might. Well, obviously, we know Celebrini will. And then beyond that, even like 2 through 10, I would expect 1 or 2 of those guys to make an opening night roster in the NHL, get their 9 games in, and then be sent back to juniors or wherever. And if 2 of them stick, I'll be pretty impressed. It can happen, don't get me wrong, but they're just generally not ready to catch up to the speed of the NHL game at that point.
Yeah, there are so many factors that play into this. Central scouting, all the boards, everything like that. They can mean almost nothing because these GMs take a look at so many things extra, so many things based off need. Maybe they see a guy with their ceiling a little bit higher, with a different kind of floor. So we're not even we'll draft you at 5 overall, but probably won't see you for 2-3 years because we want you to develop where you're either back in Europe or back in juniors or wherever it might be. When you come over here, you are going to be more than ready. We're going to see a lot of that. I feel like this is a year where a lot of these guys probably aren't going to be in on their respective teams year 1. Most likely, except for me. Celebrini probably is even maybe, the exception to that.
And of course, the argument you always have with yourself as either a coach, a GM, a scout, whatever is, if a player is capable of playing at that level but not consistently, this is the decision you have to make. Does the player benefit more? And some guys do from being sent back to a junior or college or whatever program, a European professional program and playing another year. Or there are some players who they might be on the cusp of being ready for the NHL, but being sent back to, say, junior hockey, it's men against boys, and there's no point sending them back because they're so dominant what are they learning? And I think that's the argument a lot of teams have to have with themselves. Where's the value in player development? Because you don't want to burn a year on a contract with a guy basically sitting and not really playing on an entry-level deal. So those are important. I mean, clubs to have that one extra season of control, that matters to them.
It really does. What we're going to do is we are going to take a look at some of the other experts, as well as what we've already discussed, of who Utah can pick at number 6. They will have quite a wide open selection, a lot of different opinions across the board. We'll talk about that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll keep things rolling on this episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. It is draft day. Finally getting ready for Utah Hockey Club's first ever selection, Tom, at pick number 6 in this year's draft at Sphere Las Vegas. And let's just say there are a huge amount of different opinions. We've already discussed about the board. Everyone's board is very different, and all the mock drafts are very different on where they are. For the pick for number 6 at Utah is no exception. We on the Locked On Network have Zane Parekh being selected at number 6, but I think we might be in the minority. I wouldn't even minority is not even the right word to say. We're just one sect, maybe even I guess maybe even an outlier, because there are significant other ones who have Utah selecting Byam or Utah selecting Dickinson or anybody else. What are we?
I feel like I've seen a model, Robyn. I've seen a model for every possible defenseman in the top 20 overall rated skaters.
Yep.
Everybody says, well, this could fit, and here's why. And all of the arguments make sense. And I can see where we're going with some of these. I mean, I mentioned Saleyev a moment ago. He's 6'7", 211. You cannot teach 6'7".
Yeah, he is massive. One of the biggest dudes in the draft, and Russian dude fits the exact mold of Bill Armstrong's MO. It's like if you're looking for exactly a Bill Armstrong style player, Saleyev right there.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that pick was made, but wouldn't surprise me if any of the other picks were made. It just
absolutely not.
You really, what you're projecting there is, and this is why those little interviews matter, because you're trying to find not only the hockey fit, but the culture fit, the work ethic fit, the spirit fit, like are we comfortable with one another fit organizationally? What's the vibe you're getting from these guys? And I think that's why it's so important to have those. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's really a gut decision on who you think is going to fit the best.
It really is. And that's why, again, so many people, just as we discussed in the first segment, we throw out almost what a lot of these experts say. I mean, you could take them into account, kind of give you an idea of where some of these players will be available. But at the end of the day, again, it's all about the decision that Bill Armstrong makes. I'm going to give you another example right here. Craig Button from TSN. He is actually one of the few people who has Utah selecting a forward and is projecting them to select Tisha Ginla.
That would be interesting. Now, Ginla, if he plays with half the heart of his old man, because Jerome Ginla was one of my favorite players, whether he was on a team I liked or hated, his whole career.
Oh yeah.
Watching him play was an absolute pleasure because the guy was a beast. And you know what? He was heart and soul. And if hopefully the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but if you pick that guy up and he turns out to be, a chip off the old block, boy, that's fantastic. You can't go wrong with that player.
I made a comment about this about a month ago, a little over a month ago at this point, when I was first discussing an early potential picks, and I mentioned Tisha Ginla as one of them. More, it's more like a wild card pick, because either like his range was pretty low. I mean, in our own mock draft on the Locked On, he was selected at number 5. But the reason I thought of a really kind of would be neat. Not only is he a phenomenal player, again, he's projected top 10 in many different models, but you're also looking at, on my perspective, just more of just fun anecdotes. Just imagine having the sons of 2 players who transcended the 2000s and early 2010s on one team. When you have Josh Doan and Tisha Ginla on one team, the sons of Shane Doan and Jerome Ginla, like wouldn't that be cool?
Well, that's the thing we see with generation. You know what I saw just the other day on social media was a photo somebody put up with the caption of "This is where it all began," and it was Walt Kachuk retiring with his 2 little sons in their Blues jerseys with Dad's number 7 on it. Yep. Standing there, and I'm like, that's nuts. Both of them grew up to be NHL players, and looking at those 2, it just, Brady was obviously there rooting his brother on, and how exciting was that? Like the whole family was into it, and it was such a cool moment. But I think we're seeing that a little more, and I'm going to go ahead and just for a moment take a very quick left turn to say that this is what's happening as programs in all of these hockey markets are growing up. All these youth programs are growing up. And as they grow and expand, they get better coaching, better teaching. That's why hockey is growing everywhere, because more and more people have tried it. More and more people have played it. More and more people have been bitten by the bug. So it is growing, and it is a stick tap to not only NHL teams, but also minor league hockey teams that go out in their communities and teach kids to play, because that is where it all starts. And you know what? It really helps when you have somebody to point to that came out of where you come from, that is relatable, and say, wow, he came from my hometown or hometown area. Why not me?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the fun bit of it all, and taking a look at all that. That's kind of why, Tisha Ginla would be a nice pick. Honestly, Tom, and I'll go with some of my opinion. Go back to my opinions, and my just my expert opinion on all this is, I just can't see Utah picking anyone other than a defenseman, unless, let's say, like Demidov falls down as low,
Well, sure. And you can never account for that, right? I mean, we see it in every sport draft. There's a guy that slides. So you never know who it's going to be. A lot of times, okay, maybe it kind of traces itself out, but not all the time.
Certainly. But other than that, I feel like it's the usual prospect 4, and I want to get your opinion on these on the these 4 specifically. I mean, we've already mentioned some of the names already, and kind of I want to get your own opinion, because the pick that I made in the mock draft was mine. I want to get your opinion between these 4, because these are the 4 that are the most named in all these mock drafts other than our own.
Okay.
So Parekh is the one that we've named already.
Okay.
Dickinson. So Sam Dickinson, Zeev Bayam, or Anton Salayev.
Ooh, interesting. I mean, I like Byam. I'm a big fan of size. I like bigger guys. And and you never know who's done growing, who's not done growing. I mean, especially with the younger guys, it's hard to tell. Sam Dickinson is already 6'3", 203. I don't mind guys coming out of junior. I mean, I still think American college is important. Man, that's interesting. Who would I end up going with if I had to pick? I mean, here's the other thing too, and this is Robin. One thing I want to point out as I kind of think about this, the argument I could make for Utah going with a forward in this upcoming draft is if there are plans already in-house to just build defensively in free agency right now.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm always going to pick my highest ranked player regardless of position. But I think if Utah says, you know what, we feel confident that we're going to land one of the top free agent defensemen, we feel confident that we're going to have a well-rounded and perfectly aged top 6, maybe top 7, then, which still, again, your defenseman you're picking here 3 to 5 years away. But I really think that if Utah says, you know what, our best bet is with a forward, I would not be surprised if that came to pass, but you wouldn't be unsurprised by it until we see free agency.
Right.
So, so going back to the defenseman, let's assume they're picking a defenseman. It's a tough one for me as I kind of look around to figure out who you really want to go with. And really the guys that I hear the best about, if he's still there, I think Byam might be the guy. If he's not there, I might go with Sam Dickinson. There's every chance, though, he'll be gone by then. Byam will be there's a chance they could both be gone by then. We don't know.
I have a feeling all 4 of those will be gone by the top 10, definitely.
And I don't mind the pick of Parekh either. I like that. I like his upside. I like what I read about his mental acuity for the game. And I think a lot of the good players now are the smart players. You have to have a hockey IQ in order to exceed. Or succeed. So I think that's, not a big stumbling block, but I'm sure you occasionally get the guy who's, my favorite baseball phrase of all time that I heard from a scout one time is all the tools, no toolbox. So you don't want that player.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll definitely have to see. I could be wrong and based off my own analysis that they're going to go with the defenseman. Maybe you're right. Maybe they will just pick whoever the best player available is, because as we mentioned, if a guy like Tisha Ginla, if he's available, might be hard to pass over him. We'll definitely have to see who exactly they pick. We've all given you our opinions. You can guys form your own opinion, right? And that's all you can. As I mentioned, that is all you can do in this point in the draft. At this point, there is no this. It's a shoe-in. Again, with the exception of number 1, there is no.
And I want to point something else out, Robin, too, is that so the other day Buffalo made an interesting move. They moved back a couple spots in round 1, but picked up a second. So that's a possibility too. If you're at number 6 and team number 7 or number 8 or number 9 calls and says, hey, we'll flip you our pick and then we'll give you something else to go with it. And that's the thing about, Armstrong is really, really good about kind of milking that extra little
extra value.
Yeah, that add-on, and so I think he finds a way to get the extra out of there. And to go to 14 picks in this draft would be wild, but you're really stocking your cupboards for the future. Not all of them pan out, but they will have value down the road.
Absolutely. But whether or not Utah selects a defenseman or a forward this draft tonight, Tom, it seems that reports are suggesting that Utah will be targeting a top pair defenseman either via trade or via free agency in the next couple of days. We'll talk about that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are now winding down, the NBA and the NHL are now done. We get fewer games, and the sports aren't just sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets at any time I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's keep things going on this episode of Locked On NHL in Utah. I want to remind everyone really quick that we just launched a new insider text program. You guys can go ahead and join and be a part of some exclusive content, able to text us one-on-one, ask us any questions. Maybe we'll answer right back. Get some exclusive content that you do not see on the show until maybe later. So you'll get the first to know a lot of stuff. And this is no better way to do that than right here on our new program. That all you got to do to join, send a text to this number right here that you're seeing, 801-760-9033 to get started, and use the promo code SUMMER50 on signing up, and we'll give you guys 50% off your first 2 months. It will allow you guys to really enjoy this off season without having to worry. Get you guys a good chance to try all this out before the season comes in and we really ramp things up. Let's get to the this part, Tom. Now, talking about the report that I heard just the other day. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was David Pagnotta who initially reported it. Said that keep on the lookout essentially for Utah Hockey Club to make a splash for a top pair defenseman in the next couple days. And again, that's beyond the draft. We're talking about either making a trade for a top pair defenseman or signing one in free agency. Again, the way he worded it was a little bit big, so it can be one or the other. Maybe trades for the rights of someone who's about to become one, so they can get an extra day of exclusive negotiation, whatever it might be. This intrigued me because that's when I put the comment again, as I mentioned, I think earlier this week, saying, are they going to go after a Brady Shea or a Brandon Montour, or are they going to go after whoever else?
And there's a lot of just kind of leafing through some of the defensemen who are projected, and it's always important to say projected to be available because not all of them may make it there. I talked about John Klingberg on this program last week. He's a guy who's going to be out there again, coming off hip surgery. There might be a bargain to be had there, but I don't know that he's a top pairing guy like a Brandon Montour is. There's a couple of guys I would personally avoid just because I don't think they fit what Utah needs right now. But I think Montour is definitely in that list. Brady Shea from Carolina is in that list for sure. There's probably going to be some traction. So Tyler Myers could be, although I wouldn't put him on a top pair, but he could be considered a first pair guy if you have him with a younger puck mover. At this point, he's a big guy, but he's a big guy who's 34. So, he's only going to get a little slower and a little less mobile with age. Just to keep that in mind. But I think Montour is a guy at 30 that I don't mind. Klingberg is 31, but again, it depends on his hip. I'm going to throw this name out just because sometimes you see guys come back into the fold. And no, it's not OEL, but Shane Gostisbehere. Now,
yes,
this is a specialist move. You're not bringing him in to play defense, to be perfectly honest. So if you put him on your top pair, then you need to put him with a defensively responsible guy, I think, on that top pair defensively. So it really depends to me what other players are in the mix. But I think Gostisbehere, because he's coming off a pretty decent year with the Red Wings, he's still 31. He's been so up and down, though. He's been inconsistent in his career. I do worry about that a little bit. But maybe he's a guy that could find some place maybe back in the lineup. But I don't know that I'm reaching for that, but I'm throwing it out there because I could see where it would make sense and it might be a fit.
It may be interesting. That would certainly be an interesting one, especially since, he's had a history of some of the players already. He was only on the Coyotes a couple years ago.
Right.
And actually, looked great with them. Like was having a down year with Philadelphia, got essentially like Arizona was essentially paid to take him,
Right.
and he ended up having a turnaround year and started looking a lot better. And you're right, he's not the kind of guy that's gonna be your defensive guy, which is kind of what might push me away from that thought. Maybe they're focusing some guy who can definitely play top pair D, and especially knowing how much money that Utah has to spend. As we keep saying, they have so much runway to work with that they really can outspend the next guy. And a third name that I brought up in our low insider program, it was just one that I just tossed in there, but I'd like to get your thought about it. But the potential, because this is a guy who's big, he's physical, and could potentially fit the mold for Bill Armstrong for a pending free agent, Nikita Zadorov.
Well, that's an interesting one. And the other thing too is thinking about where's the position of this club, meaning Utah. They're building.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to bring a guy in with expiring term unless you feel confident you can extend him. So if you're bringing in a guy with 1 year left, there better be a reason that you feel confident you're going to be able to expand his contract and get him to sign in Utah and fall in love with the organization if he's not familiar with it already. I could see where there's some guys out there that might be available. Some of them might have the old boat anchor. I think it's funny that Edmonton fans are already trying to ship Darnell Nurse out of town.
Right.
It's hockey fan bases are so funny and so fickle. I commented about this earlier on Twitter today, or actually it was a couple days ago now. But I said, hey, to the fans of Utah, welcome. But stay away from the craziness of every other fan base out there right now that is burning down the house. With the exception of the Florida Panthers, everyone, including Edmonton, is trying to burn down their house. It doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to be that way. So slow and steady growth here. We're doing all right. There are a couple of guys out there who have some sizable contracts that might be candidates to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
Robyn, I'm curious. I mean, Zadorov is a big name. I guess so. If you're bringing him in, what are you giving up? That's the important part. Like, what are you giving up? Because I don't mortgage the future too much. If I like what I have in the cupboard, and by all estimation, I think Bill Armstrong likes what he has.
Right.
So I'm curious, what would you anticipate to give up for a player like that? Like, what would you think that's going to cost you, whether it's opportunity cost or player cost, or, what would that run?
Honestly, that's a good question. Having to take a look at that as a whole.
So he's 20. So Zadorov is 29, 6'6", does fit the profile. Russian guy. I know that's why you like to bring that up, because that's an important one too. But most recent contract here is 3.75 AAV. So that's where he's at right now. Last season, so he split between the Flames and the Canucks. Once he went to the Canucks, he wasn't bad with the Flames. Wasn't bad with the Canucks, but puts up a little bit higher PIMs. Went to a plus player this year with the Canucks, and the Flames are terrible this year. They were just terrible. So I don't know that you can take those 21 games into account very much. But in the playoffs, he really showed up. But so to that end, I will say that I think that when a player shows up in the playoffs as big as Zadorov did, their asking price goes way up. Because now all of a sudden you're saying, well, this guy's a playoff gamer and he's, going to be this, that, and the other for you. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't like paying guys on 1 year. I never do. And I don't like paying them on one playoffs, because then you get a John Druce or a Joel Ward. And I love Joel Ward when he was with the Preds. One of my favorite guys. Awesome dude. But he had a playoff that was insane. And then Nashville couldn't keep him. Washington ended up signing him for big change. And I mean, it was a high ask for him, but he got what he was looking for, and off he went to Washington. So, I'm wary of that. I think his price is going to be through the roof because of it. I don't know if I'd
It
pay
is
it.
going to be
Is
through
what
the
I'm.
roof.
I
And I
don't know
think
if
the
I'd
only
pay
reason
it.
why, fair. I think the only reason why I brought it up though is because I feel like, again, because Utah could pay it, right? Because they have
Sure.
significant amount of one way.
Sure. And the one thing I do, want to point out to people who are always saying, "Oh, well, what are you going to do with the guy? You have all this cap room." That doesn't mean be hasty to blow it all,
Right. No,
because
you're right.
and Armstrong himself made a point of saying that this week, and he was talking about how really the timing was excellent for Utah, because around COVID, when the cap flatlined and no one expected it, they were in the perfect position to pivot and take advantage of it, because they hadn't handcuffed themselves to these deals. They hadn't married themselves to the expectation, well, the cap's going to go up $4 million every year. And then all of a sudden it stayed flat for a couple of years. And now it's just going up again. And so a lot of these contracts that GMs literally gambled they would be able to better afford in 3 and 4 years and could not, because the cap didn't go up enough or at all. That's what we're talking about. They kind of hosed themselves. And the Utah Hockey Club is in perfect position to take advantage of that, and they're still reaping the rewards from that. That's why they have so many draft picks. That's why they have cap room right now, and it's why it's a giant weapon for them. So, yeah, again, you're going to overpay some guys in free agency. That's what free agency is. Guys test the market for that reason. They know they're going to get paid more than they would. So, open market. It's capitalism at its finest, I suppose. But Utah fans, take heart, because you don't have a GM who 4 years from now is going to be bemoaning handing some guy $12 million who suddenly
Exactly.
is a bust. You
You're
don't
right.
have that guy in charge. And I think that is the best thing you can absolutely say about this franchise. They're building brick by brick slowly, and they're going to do it the right way.
What was funny though, I will mention this last bit as we get ready to close off this show. Someone made a comment. It was pretty funny. It was before I started mentioning Zadorov's name, when I just said, Shea and Montour. But I said Shea or Montour, and then someone commented, "Why not both?" I
Right.
was like, I mean, and here's the thing. Honestly, if I'm being real, you could probably get both for cheaper than Zadorov.
Wow.
I mean, like that would say cheaper, but like better. I mean, you get more value out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Boy,
you could
that's
stretch the
interesting.
dollar.
And at this point, if Zadorov at 29 is handed 7 years, so he goes up to 36, whereas Montour 37, there's not much difference there. But let's face it, to get some of these guys, you're gonna have to give both term and AAV.
Yeah.
So, and you may backload the contract, or front load it rather, so that your cash outlay is higher. And this is what makes the contracts tradable down the road. Here, this is a quick hockey 101 point for you. There are teams. So what's attractive to a team with a lot of cap space when they're trying to get to the floor or to the midpoint, wherever their goal is? Sometimes those budget franchises want to take on a giant cap hit where the cash outlay is minimal. And we see that. So we've seen contracts with guys where their first couple of years, they're due, maybe in years 1 and 2, a total of 30% or more of an entire 7-year deal. And then by the back end, years 5, 6, and 7, they're under $1 million in salary or somewhere around that. And that's attractive to teams that have that room, that cap space, because they can afford the whack. They can take the $5 million AAV whack, but they're only outlaying $1 million, $800,000 for a guy towards the back end. So that's another thing to look at, depending on what the terms of the contract are. That's what makes a contract tradable for a guy later on in his twilight years.
And those are some aspects of contracts that we'll probably discuss, on another episode. But because we really got to dive down that rabbit hole in a little bit. But you're right.
We'll be doing a 2-hour show otherwise.
Exactly. But you're absolutely right. So we'll definitely have to see, who exactly this player is that Utah or maybe players, maybe multiple, is is shooting for it. Again, it does seem that they are going for a top pair D-man. So, I mean, there is the need for it. They need roster player defensemen because as of right now, they still don't have any. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out, and we'll let you know. And right here on the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode of the podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already, and also once again, go ahead and subscribe to our insider text program. You'll get the link down below, including the promo code in the show notes, so you guys can just go ahead and get that there. Interact with us on social media too. We're available on X at LO_NHL Utah. I am at Robyn_Leonio. Tom Callahan is at Callahan on Air. Interact with us. Ask a question you might have. We might answer right back or in a future episode of the Locked On NHL in Utah podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to this episode, and we'll see you guys next time.